Jamestown Saving Bank luncheon series for this year. We have another one coming in 2 weeks with Kevin Adams, who played for the Stanley Cup finalist Carolina Hurricanes, who also is a resident, or he was born in Clarence, New York, and he now lives here right up at the lake at Bemis Point. So I was able to corral him. He wanted to come here. And his words were that his father always wanted him to be a baseball player anyway, so they were looking forward to it. But today is the crowning joy. Of all the guests I've got, I came up with these guys, and they said yes, and I couldn't have been happier. This is Ed Abramoski. He was the equipment manager and confidant of the Buffalo Bills from 1960 to 1997. From Jack Kemp, O.J. Simpson, Thurman Thomas, and Jim Kelly all the way through. To the point where, 2 years ago, I think it was, when Billy Shaw was elected, the first American League Buffalo Bill to be elected to the Football Hall of Fame, he chose Eddie to introduce him. It was a wonderful honor. And also with him today is his co-author of the book we're going to talk about a little today, Milt Northrup. 35 years with the Buffalo News, covering the Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Braves of the NBA, and all sports in between in Buffalo. I couldn't have got two more respected people from the city of Buffalo to come down here and talk at a hearth stove luncheon, so I'm going to be quiet and introduce Ed Abramoski and Milt Northrup.
Thank you very much. I really think I'm going to enjoy this. When I was a kid, I was always hanging around the Erie Sailors baseball team in Mike Canavino, so I always had a soft spot for baseball. I played Little League baseball and American Legion baseball, but was never any good enough to pursue it any further. I was fortunate enough to get a football scholarship to Purdue, and then I got injured, and I worked in the training room, and that's how I became an athletic trainer. We'll get Milt on here, and he can tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, Eddie. Eddie and I have been working on this book for about a year, more than a year and a half now. We started in January of 2001, and it was a pet project. Ralph Wilson enjoyed listening to Eddie's stories about the old Bills, especially the 60 Bills, Jack Kemp, Cookie Gilchrist, Billy Shaw, George Sames years. Probably a lot of people weren't even born then. But Ralph Wilson enjoyed Eddie's stories and remembrances of those years so much. He said, "Eddie, you got to write a book. You got to write a book." And for years after Eddie retired, Mr. Wilson put even more pressure on him, and so they invited me to work on the project with Eddie, and we hope it's going to be an enjoyable book. It's not a history of the Bills, official history. It's kind of a remembrances of a lot of fun times, a lot of good anecdotes, a lot of great personalities, some of Eddie's favorite people. And he had a lot of favorite people. He could probably tell you about some of them. You could ask him about people like Tom Sestak and Jack Kemp and Pete Metzelaars and Steve Tasker, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, people he's worked with, helped take care of it, and became close friends with. I think Eddie Abramoski probably has more friends among the Buffalo Bills than any person on this earth, including Mr. Wilson.
1960, Ralph Wilson became an owner in the new American Football League. He located his infant franchise in Buffalo, and the fans quickly made the Bills as much a part of Western New York as chicken wings and beef on weck. Buster Ramsey was the first coach and fathered the franchise through the formative seasons of 1960 and 1961.
Football League or the All-American?
That's the American Football League. That started in 1960. How I got there is I was a game day trainer for the Detroit Lions, and a group of businessmen, I think there were 14 or 15 or maybe 20 guys, each owned like 10% of the Lions, and Mr. Wilson was one of them. And when he got the American League franchise, he asked Buster Ramsey to be the coach. And so I had known Buster for 5 years, and Buster asked me to come along. And I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, so that was me coming home. And when I did this, I thought, well, this is a nice thing. If the league folds, I have a nice thing on my resume. I'm only in my early 20s, and I thought it was a good deal. And here I got to be able to have my family and stay in Buffalo for 37 years. I consider Buffalo my home.
mixed results. A call went out for Lou Saban. A personality change was in store for the Buffalo Bills. While the rest of the AFL polished gadget plays, Buffalo's number 70, Tom Sestak, concentrated on no-frills defense. The 1962 draft produced linebacker Mike Stratton, a fixture for the next decade on AFL All-Star teams. George Sains was voted the league's outstanding safety 4 straight seasons, a heady player who rarely made a mistake. Number 66, Billy Shaw of Georgia Tech, became a guard of all-pro dimension in either league. And from Canada came Carlton Cookie Gilchrist, a thundering runner and irrepressible character.
Well, Cookie Gilchrist, in my opinion, was probably the finest football player I've ever seen, but somewhere he always got tangled up in something, some kind of little sidetrack. So he was 6'2", 252 pounds, 51-inch chest, 31-inch waist, 4'6", 40, could punt, could kick off. He could have played any position on the football field he wanted to play. Really and truly he could. He just was a super football player, but he was always distracted by something. Like he lived in Toronto, and he'd drive from Toronto and he'd get caught for speeding every other day and things like that. Another time we were having a playoff game, he bought earmuffs that he had made in Canada with the Bills logo on. He got permission to have the Bills logo and was going to have them for the playoff game because it was in late December. Well, he forgot to check with customs, and they wouldn't let him bring them across, so we had like 4,000 earmuffs sitting in the Bills locker room all winter because he couldn't get them there for the game.
And that was about 45 degrees, too.
Yeah, it was about 45 degrees, too. But anyway, the story Milt was alluding to is we had just gotten Cookie from Kitchener, the ORFU, which the minor leagues of the Canadian Football League now. Harvey Johnson, who used to coach up there, coached Cookie, so he knew him. So we got him down, and we took the bus to the first game, and we were playing. And in them days, we weren't very good, and either was the Titans, and it was a lousy game. And at halftime, we're coming in. Cookie threw his helmet in the locker, and he proceeded to start taking off all his clothes. And Saban looked at me, he says, Eddie, is he quitting? I said, I don't know, Coach. He said, go ask him. Well, what had happened is Cookie always took off his socks, jocks, and T-shirt, and either, if it was really hot, he took a shower, cold shower, or a warm shower, vice versa, and put on all fresh stuff. Well, nobody knew this, so Lou went bananas. But after I told him, no, he does this all the time. He said, I thought he was, temperamental, and he was going to quit because we were that lousy. But that's a Cookie Gilchrist story.
Bluffton College's contribution was swift receiver Albert Golden Wheels to Benyon. And the final piece of the playoff puzzle was quarterback Jack Kemp, who directed the Bills' offense with imagination and daring. Buffalo's combination of creative offense and uncompromising defense carried the Bills to a 12-2 regular season record. But Kemp and his young Bills had something to prove.
We were considered a team that couldn't win a big game, although we had just beaten Boston in a very big game a couple weeks before. We had a good team, but no one really thought we were mature enough to win the championship. For me personally, it was a chance to play against the old Chargers, the team from which I had come. So it was kind of a chance to prove myself to those who, for one reason or another, I thought made a mistake.
The day after Christmas, 1964, Buffalo's resolve was as rock hard as the turf in aging War Memorial Stadium. Tobin Rote's early touchdown pass staked the flashy Chargers to a quick lead. The stage was set for the hit heard round the pro football world.
The Stratton just really laid my friend Keith Lincoln out flat, and you could just see the emotion and the passion and the credibility of the Buffalo Bills come together at that point.
A wounded Lincoln was helped from the field, and momentum changed sides as Gilchrist pitched in 122 yards rushing. Jack Kemp orchestrated 4 scoring drives, and the Bills won the AFL championship 20-7 in only their 5th year of existence.
A little about Kemp, and were you surprised when he went into politics?
Kemp was an interesting story. I think we were down in Houston or San Diego, and what had happened was Kemp had broken his finger and he couldn't play, and Sid Gilman put him on waivers the day of the game, thinking that nobody would be paying attention because everybody was playing games there and no one was paying attention. But we had astute Harvey Johnson, and he said, hey, what's his name's on waivers? So we put a claim in for him and got him for $100. Well, his broken finger was fused perfectly to foot. He couldn't bend it. This joint was fused when it broke, but it perfectly fit on the football because he made sure when it was going to heal, that's the way it healed on the football. And he was a thing. And I knew Jack was going to go into politics because he was a staunch a Republican at that time, and I grew up in a Union type Pennsylvania work type guy, and he'd always bounce off his ideas on me, and I used to always kid him that I don't know if he's the smartest guy in the world, but he was the best read because he read everything he could read on all the stuff he has. I used to tease him. I said, you just you read another book and you got that from that book and stuff like that. But he used to run by things to me, like we had a little tete about Social Security. One time he said to me, you know, Eddie, he said, does your dad need Social Security? I said, I would say so. I said, he said, well, I don't know if we need it. And he was just bouncing this off me. He wasn't proclaiming that he didn't believe in Social Security, but he was always trying to get my opinion of it. So I said, we couldn't exist without Social Security. He said, well, if my dad doesn't need Social Security. I said, what does your dad do? He said, he owns a trucking company. I said, well, what does he earn a year? He said, oh, between $35,000 and $40,000 a year. I said, my dad's working at a steel mill for $3,200. We got 5 kids. He said, I think we need Social Security. He said, well, I was just curious, and so he would do it. I knew I knew, and then I explained to him, I said to him, and this is the gospel, I'm not bragging or anything. I told him, Jack, you can't be on either end. You got to be in the middle of that bell-shaped curve if you want to get elected. If you're on one side or the other, you aren't going to get elected. So, but he used to give me little books to read. And the last book he gave me to read was the Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, and how decadence set in, and all this stuff that's sort of happening now. He was predicting in his book. But anyway, that's about Jack Kemp.
Championship, December 26th, 1964. The Buffalo Bills against the San Diego Chargers, and 20-7. I still have the goalpost, and I have the padding of the goalpost and a badge of a rent-a-cop who decided I was not going to have that goalpost. And Jack Kemp led the Bills to victory.
Jack Kemp led the Bills to their only 2 titles, but his greatest contribution to Buffalo may have come later, when he stayed to represent the town in Congress.
It was like, wow, Kemp's still in Buffalo. That's incredible. He stayed in Buffalo.
It's a great city. I love Buffalo. My wife and I lived in Hamburg, just south of the city. Fabulous city, great people.
About Tom Sestak, Tom was probably the toughest guy I've ever seen, and I really believe he should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was a fantastic football player. He had the last 2 years he made the all-league team. He never practiced. He just rode the stationary bike. He had like 6 or 7 operations on his knee. A couple stories. One time he got knocked out. He was snoring like a big baby for about 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes. I said that's exaggerating. 2 minutes. And when he finally came to, we said, oh, you okay? He said, everything's okay, then Bart. So we kept him out of the game, took him home, got him there next day, did a EEG. It came out negative. I said, don't you have a headache? Don't you have a nauseated? Nothing, he said. Well, anyway, we held him out a game, but that's the type of guy. We held him out a game and played him next week. Another time, he's sitting on the taping table, and he said, Abe, he said, you know, my back's been killing me. I said, what do you mean? What happened? He said, well, about 2 weeks ago, he said, I got kicked in the back, and he said, it's been bothering me for the whole thing. I said, well, why didn't you say something to me? He said, I thought it'd go away. So I said, well, let's go get it x-rayed. We were up in Niagara. Go to the thing, get back for the x-ray. You know, what's the name always brought the x-ray back, and the x-ray guy would write me a little note. I get the little note from the x-ray technician in Lewiston. 2 broken ribs, healing nicely. So that's Tom Sestak.
Did Joe Klobacki ever play with the Bills?
Yes, he did. Joe's from Youngsville. He's a Purdue grad. Yeah, he was. Joe was a little bit behind me at Purdue. We had a lot of Erie or local guys from around here because Stu Holcomb was the coach, and he was from Erie, and Mike Canavino, who was the mayor and did a lot for baseball, he was like a recruiter for, what's the name? Truthfully, I always wanted to go to Notre Dame, but they never gave me an offer. And so I chose, I had a chance to go to a few other places, but I chose Purdue so I could happily beat Notre Dame, and I was lucky enough that Notre Dame had 39 games in a row when we beat them with Lenny Dawson and that was one of my big highlights in college. And we had also, Michigan State had 29 games in a row, and we beat them 6-0 with a transfer, Danny Pobajewski, a kid from Grand Rapids, Michigan, that we took, scored the touchdown. So I had a fulfilled college thing of, now my grandkid loves Notre Dame, so we're at loggerheads right now.
Talk about wide right. Talk about Scott Norwood, the Super Bowl, how the team felt.
Okay.
Kelly. Now we have 2:16 to play, and this will be it. One more shot.
And you wouldn't want
Kelly in the Bills.
You wouldn't want it any other way.
No.
You wouldn't want it any other way.
90 yards away from a touchdown. What a finish. What a finish to this Super Bowl.
My goal is not to go to the Super Bowl. My goal is to win the Super Bowl.
The stage for Norwood.
Unbelievable. A lot of pressure. You want to talk about a pressure situation. That is a long way to kick a football.
The quiet man of this football team, Scott Norwood. He can fire the shot heard round the world now.
What a fine game. What an absolutely fine game.
Here we go with 8 seconds to play.
Get ready.
High drama here in the Super Bowl.
Spot. In the air. It's got the distance.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Right now, you know who I am, but I know I've never felt more love than right now. And we all realize the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and we're going to start preparing this football team right away. I know I'm going to be back. You can count on it. I'm dedicating next season to the fans of Buffalo.
90% of the guys were not upset with what they were upset because they didn't find out too late that they probably should have run the ball more, and we felt we run out of time because we were just moving the ball down the field. We had beaten them the last game of the season. I don't know, was it by 3 touchdowns or something, and we knew we were a better football. We had played it 10 times, we'd have won. So it didn't have to come down to that for him, and the guys generally feel sorry, and he's a class guy. He's a super guy, and he's coming down in for this Kelly thing, and what's the name? And I haven't seen him since, and he's married to a girl from West Seneca here in Buffalo, and I'm looking forward to seeing it because he was a real gentleman.
What was the mood in the locker room afterwards?
Just you know, they were down because we knew we were a better football team than they were, but that's the way it is. Like in baseball, a guy makes a mistake or something happens and they beat you. In baseball, though, you got a 7-game series. You can do that up. In football, it's over. You know, and so I really think that the media or whatever you want to call the press or whatever would have called the Bills a dynasty had we won one of those games. They would have been saying what a dynasty, and I think no one will ever do that again, go 4 times, and I don't think that the people realize that the talent we had. We had 17 players go to the Pro Bowl out of that 22. So that's pretty darn good. And we had a team, and we had a coach that let the guys express themselves, but he kept them under control, but he let them have their little own group of guys that controlled everything. They had their I don't know what word you want to say, that they were the clubhouse lawyers or what. They all got together and they sort of watched over what went on. And when a guy would get out of line, thing like, I can remember Darryl Telley was a fantastic guy for that. He would make guys get up. I remember we were playing Cincinnati one time, and Bruce Smith got hit in the thigh by a little 170-pound offensive back, threw a block at him and elbowed him in the thigh, and he's writhing there on the ground screaming. And I went out on the field to get him, and Darryl walked over and he said, "What's wrong with him?" I said, "Oh, he got bruised thigh." And he said, "Well, Bruce, what happened?" Bruce said, "The guy elbowed me." He said, "That little SOB 178-pound guy hit you in the, get your ass up." And he got up and played. So that's the kind of things we had.
In the length of time that Kelly was here, I felt you really saw a boy become a man without broaching locker room confidentiality. Did you see that as well? I just love to watch him mature as he went along.
He's getting there.
Yeah, I think that too, and I think that you never saw somebody as courageous as him. But the biggest thing I think what made Kelly is they let him do it himself. He called all those plays. He did everything. He did all that huddle stuff. He called everything. So he was in charge of everything, and the guys respected him because you could see him. He would, like a lot of quarterbacks won't stand. He would stand up and with a guy in his face and knew he was going to get hit and stand there and throw it, and you know he was going to get hit. So he did grow up.
I always felt that no matter whatever you said about Kelly, he's one of the toughest guys that ever played quarterback.
Exactly, no question about it. I mean, what his little tricks, what he used to always tell me when the guys would ding him or something, he'd pretend he'd fix his sock or his shoelace was untied or something, so he wouldn't have to get up and limp or do anything. He'd just be playing around and fiddling till he could gather himself and get back up. He would never let them know, or else he used to always really get hit, and he'd tell the guy, "Nice hit. Can you hit it a little harder?" You know.
Did he ever realize? A lot of times, did the fans ever realize that? What he was just doing that, or the fans ever realize that they were just putting that little thing on there so he could get up and show the people?
I don't think so, and no. But that's very common. A lot of the players do that now. They like to do that.
I want to ask you a question about the chemistry in football. We've just been through with Johnson, I think of Ferguson and other people who really had the athletic credentials and abilities, but they didn't seem to have the chemistry or whatever it takes to win. And whereas with Kemp and Kelly and maybe now with Bledsoe, is chemistry a big part of it?
Oh yeah. The big thing about this team, say with the Super Bowl teams, is they were like a family. And you know, we got the press started calling the bickering Bills and all this, but they were just like when you were growing up with your brother. You know, you always have the fight with them, everything. But when it came down to somebody else, a thing, they'd all stand up and stick up for one another, and that's the way they were. And I think myself, Joe Ferguson was probably every bit as good as Jim Kelly physically, doing it, throwing the ball, but he didn't have the cast that what's-his-name had, and Joe was a perfectionist. If Joe missed a pass or threw an interception in the first quarter, he'd still be thinking about that in the third quarter.
The picture of Eddie tending to quarterback Joe Ferguson, one of Eddie's personal favorites.
Give you an example about the mentality of some quarterbacks. Darryl LaMonica was a quarterback, mad bomber. He was playing in a game and and he missed his first 10 passes. And he comes to the sideline at timeout, and Saban says, "You big-eyed Trellian, you're killing me. You couldn't put the play in the ocean," everything else. He said, "Give me a play, coach. I'm going to complete the next 10 passes." Saban's taking it back and says, "What do you mean you're going to complete the next 10 passes? I'm a 50% passer, coach." But that's the mentality you have to have, and Joe didn't have that mentality. Joe was a perfectionist. Joe, in Shreveport is legendary. They call him the White Knight. He never had a sore arm. He never was in a training room for a sore arm or anything. Him and Chandler, I used to have to go out on the field and get them. They come in because they're always throwing balls to each other. I said, "Can I go home, guys?" Because I would never leave with them guys being on the field without me there. So, but no, chemistry is very important. A lot of guys can spoil your team. Any other questions?
What's your best story in terms of the locker room, the behind-the-scenes stuff that many of us probably may not have heard?
Well,
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them.
Tell them about the mouse that lived in the locker.
Oh, okay.
What the mouse that lived in the locker.
Oh, okay. The cute story is, we had in the new locker room, Sherman White and Freddie Smirla's room next, locker next to each other, and we had a mouse in the locker room. We couldn't catch that thing no matter how we tried to do it, anything else. But we used to kid thing. What's the name had a fetish for shoes, Sherman White, and his locker had all shoes, but they were all stacked up really nice. Now, Freddie's locker was a mess. I mean, he had Burger King bags in there and pizza things and everything else. And the guy used to say that the mouse would go over and eat in Smirlis' locker, but he wouldn't live there because it was too dirty. He'd go to Sherman White's locker room.
In 1969, Orenthal James Simpson slipped into jersey number 32, eyed the NFL record book, and proceeded to dominate a decade. He was a comet, swift, brilliant, and full of energy. He had speed and instincts beyond belief. They asked the Almighty to build a running back, and this was his prototype. Lou Saban recognized the gifts and tailored an offense to display them appropriately. Line coach Jim Ringo crafted an offensive front of Foley, Green, McKenzie, DeLamalure, Montler, and the electric company was formed to turn loose the juice. A 1,000-yard season in 1972 whetted Simpson's appetite. A year later, he was insatiable. In just half a season, Simpson reached the rushing milestone that most use to measure a full campaign. The Juice was now the focus of the pro football world. Suspense built as he bolted toward Jim Brown's seemingly unreachable record for yards gained rushing in a single season. Number 32 was the man, and 2,000 yards was the magic milestone. December 16th, 1973, a cruel wind whipped Shea Stadium. Snow spit from gray clouds, and temperatures tumbled into the icy digits. It was man against the elements and the odds. A single sentinel at the brink of immortality. There would be no coast-to-coast journeys this day. The yards came in icy chunks until Brown's record became a mere footnote, and O.J. moved into uncharted regions previously reserved for imagination.
And now it's for the 2,000, boys. O.J. running left. O.J. 5 more. There it is. They did it. I just wonder if the three of us at this moment fully realize what it is to watch O.J. Simpson run for 2,000 yards in one season.
We could talk about O.J. Simpson, the cutest story. We were just talking about it coming down in the car. I got stopped by a cop down here, and when he found out I was coming here, he didn't give me a ticket. So we were just talking about, I was going down the big hill faster than you should. I was just talking to Milton. I wasn't paying attention to that. But anyway, I was coming home from work, and I'm on the 219, and the cops got O.J. pulled over. So I go by him, and he gets a ticket, and we're going. And he lived in Amherst, and so did I. So we went on the 219 to the 90 to the 290. So I get on the 90, and all of a sudden here he comes by me again. He had a Lamborghini that was 12 cylinders, huge car, could go 140. No, so he goes by me like a pay car past the bum. Wow! I said, oh my gosh! And I go up there, and on the 290. There he is, getting the ticket again. I said, O.J., you're the first guy I've ever seen in my life get 2 tickets in 2 hours. And after that thing, Reggie McKenzie comes back in the locker room the next day, and he's walking out he lived, him and O.J. room together, so he's walking out, and he's got his football helmet. And I said, where are you going? He says, O.J.'s driving.
Talk about Billy Shaw asking you to be part of that induction ceremony. I think that's got to be a great honor.
Well, it was a great honor, and you can thank my wife over there for me doing it, because I can do these question and answer things. I have no trouble, but actually making a speech, I took like 9 hours of speech in college, because I was always a shy little Polish kid from Erie that sat in the background. And anyway, I get a phone call, and he said, Eddie, this is Billy. He said, will you present me at the Hall of Fame thing? I said, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this or not. And I said, and my wife's standing in front of me, she said, you will do it. You will do it. I said, okay, I'll do it. She said, are you going to disappoint him after a thing? And I was the first athletic trainer ever chosen to do that. And naturally, all my peers were calling me up and saying, hey, don't let us down, don't let us down. And then Chris Berman says, well, just before I get up there, he says, wow, now this is the first trainer ever doing it. He mentioned some, hope you do a good job or something. So I was nervous as heck, but I looked at Pat during the whole speech, and I wrote the speech. It's in the book in its entirety. I wrote the speech myself because I wanted to know what I was talking about, and I practiced it for 3 months. I'm not going to lie to you. I practiced it for 3 months, and so I had it memorized. But it was a great thing.
With his profound ability to lead runners down touchdown paths, Buffalo won back-to-back AFL championships in 1964 and 65. 4 years later, Shaw was out of football, yet his essence, which endured for 9 playing years, would not be forgotten.
What an honor to represent all the guys that toiled in the AFL for years and years and years. And I understand that I'm the only person in the Hall of Fame that played his whole career in the AFL. And that brings me to my knees, because there's a lot of guys there that mighty good football players that in a way, indirect way, I represent, and I'm proud of that.
After today, we will have 199 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I think deep down, just about every one of them would congratulate the men and women who do this job. But this is the first time that we've had an enshrinee choose his trainer to give his introductory speech. He was trainer of the Bills from 1960 to 1997. I think he designed those old Buffaloes on the helmets, don't you? To present Billy Shaw for enshrinement of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Ed Abramoski.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great honor to present to you Billy Shaw for induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Billy Shaw is the first player to be inducted into the Hall of Fame who played his entire career in the American Football League. When the American Football League was first formed, it was intended to be a league with teams that ran wide open passing games. This was meant to be attractive to the fans. The Buffalo Bills deviated from this concept and instead featured a grind-em-out running game in which traps, off-tackle plays, and end runs were the bread and butter of their offense. This was done mainly due to the ability of a good offensive line led by Billy Shaw. On account of the system used by most teams in the league, which was to pass first and run second, there were an awful lot of 40-30 games. For a time, the AFL was even nicknamed a basketball league in cleats. This made for a very exciting game, appealing to the new AFL fans that were eager for football in their hometowns. And for greater excitement, the league even made the football easier to pass by altering its shape. However, as I stated before, the Bills were very successful during those times. They were very successful by running the ball and running it well, and Billy's playing ability was a large factor in the Bills' success. Now, let me tell you some things about Billy. He was big, he was fast. He was intelligent, tenacious. As a matter of fact, Billy embodied all the words commonly used by coaches and scouts to describe the really great players. Above all, Billy was extremely durable and dedicated. He was a trainer's dream, as were many of the Bills players of that era. Throughout his career, he missed only part of the 1967 season due to a severe knee injury. Even then, Billy made it back on the field much sooner than our medical staff had anticipated. In those days following knee surgery, it was a common practice to put a player in a cast for 6 weeks or so. When we removed Billy's cast, he only had 15 degrees of motion. He looked up at the doctor and he said, "How soon will I be able to start exercising to build up the muscle around my knee?" The doctor told him as soon as he had full range of motion back, the exercise program could begin. Billy came back the next day with a good range of motion. He asked me, "Abe, when do we start the weights?" Befuddled, I looked at him and I said, "Billy, how did you accomplish this overnight?" He told me he put his young daughter on his ankle and lifted her up and down like a seesaw until the motion came back. This clearly illustrates the type of drive and dedication Billy had then and has now. During Billy's tenure with the team, there was an ongoing debate in the locker room as to whether Billy was truly fast or the Buffalo Bills' backs were truly slow. Of course, the answer to that question depended on whom you asked, the linemen or the backs. Anyway, it was a great pleasure to watch Billy pull out, kick out the linebacker, turn upfield, get a piece of the cornerback, and then match stride for stride the running back as they ran down the field for a big gain or touchdown. One day during the normal banter that goes on in the training room, I asked Billy, "What goes through your mind when you pull out, Billy?" In a fashion that was typically Billy, he looked at me and he said, "Eddie," he said, "when I pull out," he said, "I look that linebacker in the face, and if he's mean and has some teeth missing, I turn upfield and get that little 170-pound cornerback and let the fullback deal with the linebacker." The old adage, there's a great man. Behind every great man, there's a great woman. Certainly holds true for Billy Shaw. In his case, however, behind him stands his wife Patsy and his three daughters, Cindy, Kathy, and Cheryl. Undoubtedly, without their years of love and support, Billy would not be here today. I offer him my sincere congratulations to them and the rest of the Shaw family. Mr. Ralph Wilson, the Buffalo Bills, Billy's former teammates and I, and the fans in the city of Buffalo, who incidentally are here in great numbers, are extremely proud of Billy's upcoming induction into such a prestigious group. When one stops to consider the vast number of great players out there, whether just beginning in high school, continuing college, playing in the NFL, and all those that have played in the past, to be chosen as one of the elite is an honor beyond compare. Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank Eddie. Abe, as all of us affectionately know him, for his friendship over the years, for his dedication as a trainer, and keeping all of us well. It was a difficult choice to select a presenter, but when you put all the names in the pot and you look at that man that was instrumental in your career, it had to be Eddie Abramoski. And it was an honor and a privilege to have him present me.
The year later, Billy was with his wife. He didn't get a chance while he got inducted that first year to see all this stuff. So he came by the next year, and he was in sunglasses and a baseball hat and shorts and stuff. And he's standing by his bus there, and there's a couple from Buffalo saying, "Oh, here's Billy Shaw, a great thing, this, that, and the other thing." The guy had a camera on his neck and everything. He said, "Yeah, he was a great player, this, that, and the other thing." So his wife said, "Geez, we ought to have a picture by this thing." So Billy's standing right next to him. So he says to Billy, "Will you take my picture?" Billy took the picture, but the guy don't know today that that was Billy Shaw.
What fun. Eddie Abramoski, the head trainer of the Buffalo Bills for over 37 years. Thanks for sharing all those memories, and we look forward to reading your book, co-authored with Milt Northrup, entitled Tale of the Tape.